Hey, welcome to our podcast today. Ask Aaron and Ask EJ. This is Coach Eric Johnson, the brand.
And it's Coach Aaron Thigpen, the source. EJ, what's today's topic? I'll let you announce it.
I think what's interesting about today's topic is that something that you and I have been talking about with athletes is like your plans. How do you fit all your plans in? Your instructing, your personal trainer, your school practice, your club ball practice, academics, all that stuff. How do you fit that into a schedule, and how do you really do this on a daily basis? Because as you know, there are athletes that say, "Hey, I just had a practice. That's good enough today. That's my training." So that's what we're going to talk about today. How do you fit all your plans into a schedule where you need to really do this continuously to be a serious athlete?
Yeah, I understand that, there's a lot of components to kids' athletics nowadays, and you've got kids who've got trainers, you've got kids who've got skills coaches, then you've got your team practices and your club practices, and how do you fit it all together? Uh, you know, the thing that always comes to mind for me and planning is there should be a reason for every season. And what I mean by that is there should be a time of year where if you have those four components, their their priority switches. So maybe in your off season, your training takes priority and your off-season training and production takes priority. Then comes your maybe your skills training, and then comes maybe your club or team practices. And then another time of the year in your competitive part of the season, you're now obviously the team or the club stuff is the main priority because you're competing, and then the skills or the conditioning, depending on what you really still continue to need. So, I think all of them are important, and I don't think it's an all or nothing sort of proposition, but I think you should be moving those and adjusting those around for different times of the year. Because now that sports is a business, you can find an opportunity to play year round in any sport, but
Right.
it doesn't mean you should be playing year round. And if you do, again, where do you get those other components that are important to your development? Especially for you kids who, if you're just playing the sport for its own enjoyment, that's fine. But if you've got aspirations to really be a collegiate athlete, then you've got to understand that it's not just one particular component that you do every time of the year. Most of the time of the year, you might be doing two or even three,
Right.
and you've got to figure out how to make that work. But I had this talk just earlier this week, and I keep having this talk more and more because I've got a lot of middle school age athletes. You've got to start to look at the realities of what it takes to be an athlete and a
Mm,
collegiate athlete. And the earlier you can mimic that at a volume and intensity that's age appropriate, the better you're going to be, because then you start to ingrain the proper expectations around time and management, and what you should be getting out of your various components. And you also set up proper habits that
right.
that now it doesn't become an issue to be able to juggle sports, academics, your personal life, as some of those things start to get more and more take up more and more of your time. So even if you're just simulating that on a smaller scale as a sixth grader, I'm not talking about burnout, parents, but just getting some of those components and doubled up on them, and saying, okay, I know you've got soccer practice, I know you've got baseball practice, but we're still going to do 30 minutes of some conditioning after, or we're going to go to do it at home, or we're going to go to our local gym, or whatever we're going to do, or we're going to go to a trainer, or maybe getting up early in the morning and getting that 30 minutes in, but getting them used to putting all of these components into their athletic lifestyle, because that's what we're talking about, is going to better prepare them, one, from the standpoint of the physicality and physical development you have to progress with, the tactical and skill set that you have to develop, but also the mindset.
Mm,
Because I have too many kids and parents who talk about, well, you know, I had soccer practice today, or I had baseball practice today,
mhm.
and like that's an excuse not to do something else. And I laugh at some of this because some sports you might be have a 2 hour practice, but you're standing around a lot, i.e. baseball. I mean, how physically stressful is a baseball practice? I'm sorry. Unless your coach is already having you doing some conditioning, things like that inside of that. So you got to look at this realistically. And if you're not prepared to do that, then you need to change your expectations.
Well said. I just wow, hit the point. You know, I like what you said about this athletic lifestyle. I think far too many young athletes, far too many parents out there forget if you want to attain to be a collegiate athlete or let alone a varsity high level athlete at a lot of competitive high schools, this athletic lifestyle is important, you know, and understanding how do you put in the training and skills training practices and games and how they mirror in a year. I think the biggest thing I see, Aaron, is that how people are not planning correctly during the year, you know, and people just don't plan. They say, "Oh, I'm just going to go and train." Okay, you're going to train, but you're playing football now, okay? And it's the fall and you have games and practices. What kind of planning is that? I'm gonna go train 3 days a week, like, and then go play football. Wait a minute. Let's have a plan.
Yeah.
This is my plan during the season. This is my plan during the off season. This is my preliminary plan before we start the season. There needs to be something going on, and I think there it takes dedication, takes time to sit down and really map out what they need to do. And I was sitting with, I think of two things. One, I was talking to one of my collegiate athletes, Aaron, and it's so funny. He said to me, he goes, "Man, I can't believe how much we have going on." I go like, "Well, I did tell you that from time you get out of bed, you're gonna have, you know, whether it's weight training or whether it's some sort of agility going on, then you're gonna go eat, and then you're gonna go to class, you can come back, you're gonna have practice, then you got study hall, and then there may be another weight session." So, you know, he was like, "I can't believe it's really it's you said it, but wow, it's really actually happening." And I go, "Yes, it's actually happening. This is what you want to do. Now you're going to live it." And I think if you can get athletes ready before that happens, they're
Right.
going to be well prepared in dealing with that. So, any parents and players out there, really understand what we're really saying. You want to be a competitive collegiate athlete, but you have to live that lifestyle.
Yeah. Yeah. You can't, don't bury your head in the sand thinking that, I'm just going to do this and one thing and it's going to happen. It doesn't work that way. You're going to get outworked easily,
Right.
outworked easily. And, because the landscape has changed, and, we talked about it in our last podcast about how, when should you start getting prepared to be a recruitable collegiate athlete? We've, I've revised that from the 8th grade to the
Right.
6th grade,
Exactly.
only because of the mismatches that you have in body maturity and physicality that you're seeing now. Parents, you guys need to really understand. You've got your 17 or 18-year old, they've got to compete with 22, 23-year olds.
Yes.
That those are light years away. That's like saying, okay, my 5-year old is going to compete against 10-year olds.
Right.
In sports, that physical development can be light years away.
Goodness, yes.
And that's what it's like now for collegiate athletes. And so unless you start that curve, I'm not trying to instill panic or anything, have people rush, but you've got to understand that there's a path that you guys have to embark on fairly early now, and with some forethought and some planning and management, if you even want to have a chance to be on the right trajectory to finish at the right point by the time you're a senior to be competitive.
Yeah.
If you're ignoring that, and again, like you said most people don't plan, they're reactive, and that's what happens. People get caught in the reactive mode of as things come to them, then they respond.
Right.
Oh, well, we didn't think about off-season training until it was offered to us by the club. We didn't think of,
Right.
skills, working on some skills training until either it was offered or there was some failure or something.
Hmm.
Well, those are things that you should be proactively planning, saying, hey, look, at this time of year for these months, this is what we're trying to get done. At
Right.
this time of year for this month, for these months, these are the things we're going to try and get done. And like I said, you got at least three things to focus on. Some of you got maybe four or five. Some of you still have issues with the mental aspect of your games and being ready emotionally to compete and those sorts of things, handling stress. So some of you might have four or five different buckets that you've got to fill throughout the course of a year. And you can only do that properly by forethought. Now, if you don't want to do that, well, hey, the chips land where they may. And there are no guarantees or anything, but I always say you can increase the probability of
Right.
success.
Well, you can, Aaron, and I think you said something really important. I see this lacking with a lot of athletes this day, and this is becoming a consistent subject. It seems to come across my desk, or I see it in public. You said it, the mental side of the game. Whether it's amazing to me how athletes aren't mentally prepared to train, let alone compete, Aaron. And I think it's a certain mindset that they have to have. And when we talk about trying to fit all these training components and games and practices and all that special skills coaches things together, the mental side of that is as equally important, so you can get right. If your head's not right, Aaron, and you and I know this, you're in trouble as an athlete. Whether you're training, practicing, developing your skills individually, or just you taking a break from it. If you
Right,
don't know how to slow your mind down and get away from it, you're in trouble. So I think that's part of this, how do you fit your plans in is the mental side of it.
right,
Get get your head right so you can actually function in a competitive environment now,
right.
So
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of speaks to, another topic I want to talk about at some point where parents, you guys have to understand you can't lessen your kid to success.
whoa.
You can't you can't purchase lessons and just think all I'm going to do is purchase lessons and my kid's going to get as good as he needs to get. You've got to look at all the other aspects and invest in that and those
Hmm.
things as well. And
Right.
if you don't, like I said, you're setting yourself up for, at some point there's going to be a day of reckoning. And I don't want to beat a dead horse, but there's certain things that separate athletes. And
Mm.
and to keep it simple, coaches take those who are biggest, those who are strongest, those who are fastest first. Those are all physical attributes.
Yes.
Okay. So your kid might be an expert dribbler, or he might have a great three-point shot, but if there's no physicality or there's no process for developing physicality, it's not going to matter because the way sports has changed now is they're taking bodies first and skill second. Because what they're going to do is they're going to take that body, that overperforming body, that above average body, and they're going to slot it and teach it the specific skills that they want it to have. So it
Mhm.
plays the game or the position the way they want it to be played. And if you're not, your eyes aren't open to that reality, go ahead, keep burning money on lessons. I'm not saying lessons aren't valuable, but they need to be complemented with other forms of development. But you're not
Yeah.
going to lessen yourself to a college scholarship. Not now.
Well said with that because it's true. Physicality, people say it and they've been saying this. You and I have been talking about this for years and years. Bigger, stronger, faster. And we'll teach you. I've heard this in meetings. Oh, that guy's got the physicality. We can teach him how to hit.
Yeah.
We'll teach him how to throw. The arm is okay, but he's strong enough where it's physical where we could get that to work. I mean, that's gonna happen. That's how it is in sports now. If you can't wake up to that and understand that, it's passing you by.
Right.
I really say that, Aaron. It's passing you by. I see so many talented young people that have this ability, but the physicality and the athleticism is so, underachieved that they can't compete. I mean,
Sorely lacking. I'll just say it. And probably 60% of the kids
mhm,
nowadays sorely lacking. So I just say, hey, you got to ask yourself, where do you want to go with your sport? And I
right.
don't, like I said, I don't mean going out and getting a CrossFit, thing, membership or, going and turning into a bodybuilder. But there
Yeah.
should be a plan in place that, puts you on a course to say, hey, okay, this is the type of body I'm trying to develop into in the next 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 6 years. That way you can make sure you're on track for that. But don't go out and spend thousands upon thousands of dollars, on hitting lessons. And your kids, by the time he's a senior, he's still a buck 30. It doesn't
Right.
matter. Yeah, he can probably might be a great hitter. He might have great contact, but there's going to be guys who can hit just as well, whose exit velocity might be 185, 200 miles off the bat,
Right.
and your kid's at 160. Well, by then it's too late. You're not going to catch up.
Yeah.
So I think that's the biggest issue facing a lot of athletes. And the thing is that a lot of them don't realize before it's too late. So you can't outpay to outplay.
Woo. Whoa. Hey, that's mic drop right there. Right there, Aaron. It's true. You can't do that.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people think you can. And what I see now out there in the public in America, because I've been all over the country looking at baseball games and watching guys play. Hey, man, you said it. The people that are more physical are the better players now,
Yeah.
and they're physical. And we're not talking about the guy's 6'5" and
No.
he's 225. That's not what we're saying, people. I want to make sure you understand that. We're talking about an athlete, 5'10",
Yeah.
175, and their physical is all get up.
Yeah.
They're out there and they've worked on their body. One example, I hate to use this name again, Michael Ayakawa. It
Yeah.
goes back to him, and it's just you've got to be physical to play this game,
Yeah.
and you've got to understand your training, your skill development, your practices, your games, and find out what's important to you and how to plan it.
And again, I'm glad you mentioned that because I don't want this just to be an eye contest thing. When I'm
Right.
talking about physicality, I'm talking about how you demonstrate your athleticism. Do you demonstrate it with force, with confidence? You know, do you move and have a certain posture? You know, does the ball explode off of your bat a certain way? And you can be 150
Right.
and be powerful because look at gymnasts, look at martial artists,
Oh my
look
goodness.
at fighters. Just because a guy has a flyweight doesn't mean he's not powerful and doesn't demonstrate his athleticism aggressively and forcefully. And that's what I'm talking about.
Right.
because you can be an undersized kid. Hell, I was an undersized kid, but there's a saying, you got to play big.
Oh, yes.
And so, you've got to again move and demonstrate your athleticism, you know, beyond your stature is what I'm saying.
Yes. Well said. And on that note, Aaron, you know, I'm glad you enjoyed our podcast today. I hope you can ask us questions. So, and because we have things that come up constantly, and these are from people that ask us questions about certain subjects that we like to talk about. So, again, ask us questions. This is Coach EJ from the Ask Aaron and Ask EJ show.
And this is Coach Aaron. He threw me off, man. He did a different outro.
Of
We'll
course I
see you
did.
guys.